The strange surrounds us everywhere, and science can't always explain everything. Today we'll examine 10 case files about missing persons and their unexpected returns. But these aren't ordinary disappearances. They contain peculiarities that we'll try to decipher from a scientific perspective. But before we begin, please subscribe and hit the like button. Now you can relax while I tell you about these unique cases. Case File 1: Stephen Kubaki, the man who disappeared for a year. The morning of February 17, 1978, began like any other winter day for Stephen Kubaki. The 23-year-old German philology student, passionate about linguistics and philosophy, decided to go cross-country skiing along the frozen shores of Lake Michigan. The weather was clear, with temperatures around -5 degrees Celsius, perfect conditions for skiing. He told his dorm neighbor he'd be back by lunch, grabbed his standard gear, and set off on his usual route. It was the last time anyone saw him in his familiar surroundings. When Kubaki didn't return by evening, his friends grew worried. The next day, a large-scale search began, involving local police, rescue teams, and volunteers. His ski tracks were clearly visible in the snow, but 1.5 kilometers from shore they abruptly stopped on the smooth ice, as if the man had simply vanished into thin air. Nearby, they found his skis standing upright and a backpack with sandwiches and a thermos. Everything looked as if he had deliberately left his belongings behind. The water beneath the ice was about 30 meters deep, but divers who searched the lakebed within a 200-meter radius found no trace of him. The search continued for weeks but gradually faded. The case remained open, but all leads had dried up, from accidents to intentional disappearance. Kubaki's grieving parents even placed a memorial plaque by the lake. Then 15 months later, on May 3, 1979, something unbelievable happened. A resident of the small town of Pittsfield, 370 kilometers from where he disappeared, woke to find a disoriented young man standing on her lawn. It was Stephen Kubaki, pale but physically unharmed, dressed in an odd dark gray wool suit of old-fashioned cut. He couldn't explain how he'd gotten there, and the last thing he remembered was skiing on Lake Michigan that fateful day. A medical examination at the local hospital revealed no injuries or signs of violence. Tests showed he had been eating normally the whole time. Two details particularly puzzled doctors: his watch had stopped on the date of his disappearance, and in his suit pocket was a movie ticket for a Chicago theater dated February 12, 1978, 5 days before he vanished. Yet Kubaki insisted he'd never owned such a suit or bought that ticket. After his return, his behavior changed dramatically. Once sociable and cheerful, he became withdrawn and pensive. Strangely, in a short time, he completed a dissertation in comparative linguistics, earned his doctorate, and published a philosophical work, The Nature of Time and the Boundaries of Consciousness, which explored parallel realities and the quantum nature of memory. When journalists pressed him about his disappearance, he only replied cryptically, "Sometimes reality is more complex than we can imagine." Experts proposed various theories. Psychiatrist Dr. Ellen Meyer suggested a rare case of dissociative fugue, a mental state where a person unconsciously travels and creates a new identity. But such episodes usually last days or weeks, not 15 months. Criminal investigators ruled out abduction. There were no ransom demands or political motives. The most intriguing theory came from physicist David Lawrence, who studied anomalous phenomena. He noted that Lake Michigan had a history of temporal disturbances and magnetic anomalies. Meteorological records from the day of Kubaki's disappearance showed unusual atmospheric events, noctilucent clouds, and magnetic field fluctuations. Kubaki himself never shed light on the mystery. His posthumously published diary contained just one strange entry. "They told me time is not a river but an ocean, and sometimes the waves cast us onto foreign shores." To this day, his case remains one of the most enigmatic unsolved disappearances. Annual conferences on anomalous phenomena are held at Lake Michigan, where Kubaki's story is still debated. Officially, the case is closed, but some FBI files related to the investigation remain classified. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between the lines of official reports, in the shimmer of noctilucent clouds over the lake's cold waters still guarding its secret. Dossier No. 2 James Tedford, disappearance on a moving bus. On a cold December evening in 1949, a Vermont Transit Company bus was making its usual route from St. Albans to Bennington. Among the passengers was James Tedford, a 53-year-old World War II veteran, returning to a veteran's home after visiting relatives. This trip was supposed to be routine for him, but instead it turned into one of the most inexplicable mysteries in the history of American criminal investigation. Witnesses, including the driver and several passengers, unanimously confirmed Tedford did board the bus and occupied his seat until the last stop before Bennington. Some even spoke with him during the ride. An elderly couple sitting opposite particularly remembered him. They noted that the veteran appeared calm, was reading a newspaper, and showed no signs of anxiety. However, when the bus arrived at the final station, Tedford was nowhere to be found. The strangest thing was that all his belongings remained untouched. A brown leather suitcase lay on the luggage rack above the seat. On the seat itself were a folded newspaper, his ticket, and even an open pack of cigarettes. The driver swore that between the last stop and the final destination, the bus made no stops, the doors did not open, and no one could have exited. The passengers confirmed this. The bus went non-stop for the last 20 minutes of the trip. The location of the disappearance added to the mystery. At the time, the bus was passing through the so-called Bennington Triangle, a region in Vermont infamous for a series of unexplained disappearances during the 1940s and 1950s. From 1945 to 1950 alone, at least 5 people vanished there under similar circumstances. All of them disappeared in open areas, often in front of witnesses without any apparent reason. Police conducted a thorough investigation. The bus was carefully inspected. No hidden compartments or possible places where a person could hide were found. The theory that Tedford might have jumped out while the bus was moving was ruled out for several reasons. The doors remained shut, the windows were fixed due to the winter cold, and there were no footprints in the snow along the road. Moreover, considering the veteran's age and physical condition, he limped due to a wartime injury. Such a jump would have been nearly impossible for him. Scientific explanations of this phenomenon range from mundane to fantastic. Psychologists suggest the possibility of a mass hallucination. All the witnesses might have mistakenly remembered Tedford's presence, though he never actually boarded the bus. However, this does not explain where the real person went, whose absence was later confirmed by relatives. Criminologists allow for the version of a carefully planned escape, but why leave all belongings behind? And most importantly, where and why would an elderly veteran flee, having neither enemies nor legal troubles? Paranormal explanations include theories about time anomalies typical for the Bennington Triangle. Some researchers of anomalous phenomena associate this case with supposed portals to other dimensions which allegedly open spontaneously in this geographic area. Ufologists proposed a theory of abduction by aliens, though no UFO sightings were reported that day. Interestingly, archives of the military department contain records of an unusual incident involving Tedford during his service in 1944. A report mentions that he disappeared for several hours from his unit in Italy and later reappeared in the same place, claiming that he had walked through a fog and ended up in another time. The command dismissed it as combat fatigue, but now this episode seems like a sinister omen. Tedford's case officially remains open, though active searches ceased in 1952. His name appears in several FBI documents related to the study of anomalous zones in the U.S. In the 1970s, journalists discovered that some materials on this case had been removed by the military. The reason remains unclear to this day. One last strange detail: in 2003, in the old house of a former employee of the bus company, A service log from December 1949 was found. On the page dedicated to that ill-fated route, someone had handwritten passenger number 14 not arrived, although all official records listed Tedford as passenger No. 12. Who was this mysterious 14th passenger, and what relation did they have to the veteran's disappearance? Another riddle left unsolved. More than 70 years later, the case of James Tedford continues to captivate the minds of paranormal researchers. Every December, enthusiasts hold memorial events on the road where that fateful route passed, and bus companies in Vermont still unofficially leave one seat empty on routes through the Bennington Triangle, just in case the missing veteran ever returns. Dossier No. 3, Jason Joliczki, missing for 15 years, didn't age. On the evening of September 12, 2006, 21-year-old Jason Joliczki left his parents' home in Pittsburgh to take a walk before bed, a usual habit he had maintained since high school. Surveillance cameras on a nearby street recorded the young man in a blue hoodie and jeans heading toward the local park. These were the last frames showing his image. When Jason did not return by morning, a search began, but no traces or evidence of his possible whereabouts were found. Exactly 15 years later, on September 12, 2021, the door of his parents' house opened, and Jason appeared on the threshold, in the same blue hoodie and jeans, as if he had just returned from that very evening walk. His appearance shocked his family. In the span of a decade and a half, he had practically not changed, showing no signs of natural aging. Medical examination confirmed the incredible. Jason's biological age corresponded to 23 years old, as if time had stopped for him. Jason himself could not explain where he had spent those years. His memory retained only the moment of entering the park area, after which there was a blackout, followed by the realization of standing in front of his parents' home. At the same time, he was sincerely surprised by the new wrinkles on his parents' faces and the changes in the city. A curious detail was the condition of his personal belongings. His mobile phone, a 2006 model, had a full battery charge, and his driver's license and other documents looked as if they had just been issued. Specialists who studied the case proposed various hypotheses. Neuropsychologists suggested a rare form of dissociative disorder, in which a person can exist for years in an alternative state of consciousness, unaware of the passage of time. However, this theory did not explain the absence of physical aging. Forensic experts investigated the version of an abduction followed by return, but no traces of Jason's stay anywhere during those years were found. The place of his disappearance drew particular interest. The park Jason headed to is located in an area where geomagnetic anomalies have been recorded more than once. In 2008, 2 years after the disappearance, a group of geologists registered strange fluctuations in the magnetic field there, accompanied by brief visual distortions. Ufologists linked Joliczki's case to the phenomenon of time loops, theoretical zones where the flow of time may significantly slow down compared to normal space. Interestingly, during the medical examination, 2 unusual physiological deviations were discovered in Jason: an elevated level of melatonin in the blood, which could explain a slowing of aging processes, and slight changes in the hippocampus, the area of the brain responsible for memory formation. Neurologists suggested that these changes might have been caused by exposure to an unknown external factor. After his return, Jason underwent a long period of adaptation. Although he quickly adjusted to technological changes which surprised psychologists, he continued to be plagued by strange dreams in which he saw a corridor of fog and voices speaking in an incomprehensible language. In 2022, he unexpectedly demonstrated the ability to speak fluently in a medieval variant of the German language, though he had never studied it. Linguists who examined this phenomenon confirmed the authenticity of his knowledge. The Joliczki case remains open. In 2023, A group of physicists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology proposed a hypothesis that such cases may be linked to micro-manifestations of quantum entanglement in the macroscopic world. However, conclusive evidence for this theory has yet to be presented. Today, Jason leads a reclusive lifestyle, avoiding media attention. He made his only public statement in 2022. "I don't know where I was for those 15 years. But I do know that time is not what we think it is." His case continues to be studied by specialists in neurophysiology, quantum mechanics, and parapsychology, remaining one of the most mysterious time anomalies of the 21st century. Interesting postscript. In October 2023, a small, previously unknown cave was discovered in that very same park. Strange symbols resembling a combination of ancient runes and mathematical equations were found on its walls. Research is ongoing, but already some scientists suggest a connection between this find and the Joliczki phenomenon. Dossier No. 4, the girl from Harvardtown, 6 months outside of time. In the spring of 1867, in the small farming settlement of Harvardtown, Massachusetts, an event occurred that left a deep mark in local folklore. 9-year-old Mary Ellis, daughter of farmer Jonathan Ellis, disappeared while her parents were working in the field. According to testimonies preserved in the town archive, the parents had left the girl to play near the house for just 10 minutes. When they returned, the child was nowhere to be seen. The search began immediately. Over the following months, all the nearby forests were combed through by volunteers. Traps were set for wild animals, professional hunters were hired, and even Native American trackers were consulted. No trace of the child could be found. The local priest even held a special service, assuming the worst. The incredible happened exactly 6 months later. In the autumn of that same year, Mary walked out of the same forest, wearing the very same blue dress she had disappeared in. Astonishingly, the dress appeared absolutely new, without signs of wear or dirt. The girl herself showed no signs of starvation or having been exposed to the outdoors for such a long time. Her physical condition puzzled even the local doctor, who noted in his records, "The child looks as if she has been gone no more than an hour." When the girl was questioned, she told a strange story. According to her, in the forest she met a tall woman in white who led her to a beautiful house with silver windows. There, the stranger fed Mary sweet berries that don't grow in our woods and told her fairy tales in a strange language. When asked why she didn't try to escape, the girl replied that the days there were short, and when she decided to return, the woman simply pointed her to the door, and the girl found herself at the edge of the forest. After her return, strange events began to occur in the Ellis home. Neighbors and relatives reported doors opening by themselves, objects moving on their own, and a woman's voice humming a lullaby. The most impressive testimony came from the school teacher, who said he saw an inkwell rise into the air and gently place itself on a shelf. These events continued for about 3 months, then gradually subsided. Modern researchers offer several explanations for this case. Anthropologists point out its striking resemblance to European folk tales about fairy folk, beings who supposedly abduct people into their world where time flows differently. Psychologists suggest a rare case of dissociative disorder, in which the child's mind might have created a complex protective fantasy to cope with trauma. However, this does not explain the girl's physical condition upon her return. Interestingly, archives from the Society for Psychical Research, founded in 1882, contain a record of a similar case in 1843 in the same region. Back then, an 8-year-old boy disappeared and returned with a similar story. Geologists note that small quartz deposits are found in this area, which in theory can generate weak electromagnetic anomalies. Mary Ellis's fate unfolded unusually. As an adult, she became known in the area as an herbalist, reportedly possessing unusual knowledge about plants. Local records mention that in the 1890s, researchers from Harvard visited her, but the results of their studies were never published. One last oddity: in 1921, when the old Ellis house was being dismantled, a strange artifact was found behind one of the walls, a silver hand mirror with an engraving in an unknown language. By description, it matched what Mary in childhood called the windows in the tall woman's house. Unfortunately, this item was lost in the 1930s. Today, the story of the girl from Harvardtown continues to stir the minds of anomalous phenomena researchers. Every October, enthusiasts gather in the former settlement, now part of the town of Harvard, trying to unravel this century-old mystery. Official science still cannot provide a definitive explanation for what happened to Mary Ellis in 1867. Perhaps, as the girl herself said before her death in 1934, some doors open only once and only for the chosen. Dossier No. 5. Leroy Cartwell, the Ghost Soldier. In the spring of 1971, during an operation in Vietnam, Sergeant Leroy Cartwell disappeared under mysterious circumstances. His unit was engaged in combat near the Thak Ba River when Cartwell, according to eyewitness accounts from fellow soldiers, dove into thick underbrush while pursuing the enemy. A few minutes later, a strange hum was heard, similar to rolling thunder with no clouds, after which the sergeant was never seen again. Intensive searches yielded no results. No body, no equipment. A year later, he was officially declared dead, and his family in Texas received burial documents and posthumous honors. 20 years later, in March 1991, a man in a worn army uniform from 1971 appeared on the doorstep of his parents' home in Austin. It was Leroy Cartwell, outwardly almost unchanged, appearing at most 30 years old. His dog tag, documents, and even his wristwatch, which displayed the date of disappearance, confirmed his identity. A medical examination initiated by the Pentagon produced shocking results. His biological age corresponded to 28-30 years, though at the time of return, Cartwell should have been 46. The soldier himself claimed that for him no more than 2 weeks had passed. According to him, in the jungle he saw a strange blue mist, after which he found himself on a deserted road which he recognized as the driveway to his childhood home. His reaction to 1990s modern technology became a key point for psychiatrists. He genuinely did not understand how color televisions worked, was baffled by microwave ovens, and insisted that John Kennedy was still president. When shown a newspaper with the current date, Cartwell at first thought it was a prank. Military experts proposed several theories. The most pragmatic one, desertion followed by a hoax, was ruled out. DNA analysis, a new technology in 1991, confirmed kinship with his mother, and the condition of his uniform and boots indicated long-term exposure to jungle conditions, though not 20 years. The theory of imprisonment also did not hold up. Vietnamese records contain no mention of Cartwell, and his physical condition did not match long-term captivity. Parapsychologists noted similarities with other cases of time anomalies in Vietnam. In CIA documents declassified in 2004, Operation Starbridge is mentioned, a study of strange electromagnetic phenomena in the Khe Sanh Valley area, where several soldiers went missing. Interestingly, in 1988, a Vietnamese farmer reported an encounter with an American ghost soldier whose description matched Cartwell. After his return, Leroy Cartwell lived under the observation of military psychologists. In 1993, he suddenly began speaking fluent Vietnamese, a language he had barely known before his disappearance. In his journals published after his death in 2005, there are mysterious entries about crystal caves and people who live outside of time. One final oddity: during autopsy, pathologists discovered spores of tropical plants in his lungs, characteristic of the Vietnamese jungle, but absent in Texas. This case remains one of the most closely guarded secrets of the Pentagon. Officially, it is classified as a special form of post-traumatic syndrome, but many researchers believe that Cartwell truly encountered a phenomenon beyond the boundaries of modern science. His story formed the basis for a classified program to study time anomalies in combat conditions, which only became known in the 2010s. Dossier No. 6, Susan and John Gibson, a 3-day time shift. An ordinary evening in October 1979 was supposed to be an unremarkable event for the Gibson couple from Cardiff. Returning after dinner at friend's house along a familiar country road, they suddenly encountered a phenomenon that baffled specialists in anomalous events. In the area of the village of Lenharchen, their car was surrounded by a dense whitish fog, unlike the usual Welsh fog in both density and behavior. The witnesses described how the car radio first began to emit strange clicks, then went completely silent. The compass on the dashboard, which John Gibson checked out of professional interest being an electrical engineer, spun wildly, unable to find north. Most alarming, the familiar road suddenly changed. Instead of known turns, there appeared a straight stretch bordered by unfamiliar trees. According to Susan, who was driving the car, this state lasted no more than half an hour. When the fog dispersed, they found themselves on the same section of road where the strange phenomenon had begun. It would have seemed nothing unusual, if not for one circumstance. Upon arriving home, they were horrified to discover that all the clocks in the house, including precise electric ones, showed the date as 3 days later. Their absence had already been noticed by neighbors, and the police had even begun preliminary searches. The most convincing evidence of a time shift came in 3 facts. First, the odometer readings. The car had traveled only 43 kilometers, exactly the length of their usual route, without accounting for 3 additional days. Second, the complete absence of signs of life. Their clothing was clean, and there were no crumbs or empty food wrappers in the car, which would inevitably appear over the course of 3 days. Third, a medical examination showed that physiologically the couple displayed no signs of being awake for 3 days. There were no typical changes in blood composition that indicate a prolonged period without sleep. Interestingly, this case was officially recorded by the local police. In the report of Constable Evan Lloyd preserved in the archives of South Wales, it is especially noted, the claimants displayed genuine bewilderment and did not attempt to create a sensation. An investigation of the vehicle, conducted by auto experts at the request of the insurance company, revealed a curious anomaly. The battery was completely drained as after prolonged inactivity, although according to the Gibsons the car had not stood still. Psychologists who examined the couple ruled out the version of a shared psychosis or artificially induced amnesia. Professor David Meredith from Cardiff University noted in his conclusion, "This is one of the rare cases where we observe complete alignment of subjective experiences in 2 people, in the absence of physiological or psychopathological explanations." Ufologists immediately linked this case with other anomalies in Wales. In 1905, strange lights were observed in the same area, dubbed the Welsh Phantom Lights by the press. In 1977, 2 years before the Gibson incident, a local farmer reported a metallic disc hovering in the air, after which all the clocks in his house stopped working. After this event, the couple's life changed. John Gibson, previously skeptical toward paranormal phenomena, began collecting accounts of similar cases. In 1983, he published a brochure titled Lost Moments, in which he analyzed 17 similar incidents in the UK. He paid particular attention to the fact that in 12 of these cases, the same thick white fog was observed. Susan Gibson noted strange after effects. After the event, she developed the ability to determine the exact time without a watch, and also experienced an allergy to certain electromagnetic frequencies, near operating microwave ovens and certain radio transmitters. She began to suffer migraines. Physicists from the University of Bristol who studied the case in 2001 proposed a hypothesis about the spontaneous formation of a local bubble with altered temporal characteristics. Emily Carter suggested, if we imagine time as a river, then in certain places temporal whirlpools may form where the flow changes its speed. The Gibsons insisted on the authenticity of their experience until the end of their lives. John died in 2012, Susan in 2015. Their story became one of the most well-documented cases of a time shift, regularly mentioned in scientific works on quantum physics and studies of the nature of time. The final mystery remains a small notebook found among John's belongings after his death. In it were recorded strange mathematical calculations and the phrase, "They said we were in a place where time sleeps." What this meant remains a mystery. Dossier No. Tonka, Disappearance in the Carpathians. On a foggy morning in September 1994, Romanian tourist Ovidiu Tonka set out on a solo hike to the famous Bucegi Plateau in the Carpathian Mountains. This region has long been considered an anomalous zone. Local legends tell of missing shepherds, strange lights, and doors to other worlds. Tonka, an experienced mountaineer and a skeptic, planned to dispel these superstitions. His disappearance and subsequent return became one of the most mysterious cases in the history of the Romanian mountains. 3 days after the start of the hike, when Tonka did not make contact, a search began. Rescuers combed the entire route indicated in his note, but found only an abandoned backpack with untouched supplies. A cause for special concern was that near the backpack lay his watch, mechanical, in excellent condition but completely stopped. The search continued for 8 days, and when hope had nearly faded, the unbelievable happened. Tonka walked into the rescue camp in an area that had already been thoroughly searched. His appearance raised more questions than answers. His clothing was clean and dry, although it had rained in the mountains for several days. His physical condition was excellent, no signs of exhaustion or dehydration, even though 11 days without food or water should have left their mark. But the strangest part was his story. Tonka claimed that after he stepped off the trail to photograph an unusual stone formation, he was surrounded by a thick, milky fog. When the fog cleared, he found himself in a city without a sun, a place where light seemed to come from everywhere, casting no shadows. According to him, the buildings there were made of a material resembling solidified light, and the inhabitants, if they could be called that, moved silently and seemed not to notice him. "I felt neither hunger nor fatigue," Tonka later said. "There was no day or night there, only a steady glow. When I tried to photograph the place, the camera didn't set work. The watch and compass also stopped functioning." The most puzzling aspect was the state of his camera. The film examined by specialists was completely blank, like new, although Tonka swore he had taken several shots before disappearing. The electronic devices in his backpack, a pocket computer and GPS, were completely discharged, and the batteries appeared dried out as if from intense overheating. The locals were not surprised by this story. In Carpathian shepherd folklore, there have long been tales of hidden valleys that people sometimes stumble into. One place was mentioned particularly often: the land without shadows, astonishingly similar to Tonka's description. Scientists from the University of Bucharest who investigated the case noted that strange magnetic anomalies are indeed recorded in the Bucegi Plateau area, and geological surveys show the presence of extensive underground cavities of unknown origin. After his return, Tonka underwent strange changes. Previously indifferent to music, he suddenly began composing complex symphonic pieces, claiming that he heard them in his head. His drawings, he took up a pencil for the first time in his life, depicted bizarre architectural forms, resembling fractal structures. In 1997, he disappeared again, this time forever. In his farewell note was written only, "They are calling again. This time I must stay." An interesting postscript: in 2001, a group of speleologists discovered a strange stone formation in the Bucegi Mountains, a perfectly round entrance to a cave that, in their words, seemed artificial. Inside, they found only a small metallic object resembling a gear but made of an unknown alloy. Analysis showed that the material did not correspond to any known technology. The case of Ovidiu Tonka remains open. For some, it is a story of a mental breakdown. For others, proof of the existence of parallel worlds. But for the people of the Carpathians, It is simply another chapter in the ancient legend of mountains that sometimes take people and very rarely give them back. Dossier number 8. Peter Gibb and Bert Brandt. Disappearance after the jump. In the spring of 1953, one of the strangest escapes in the history of the penal system occurred in the Australian state of Victoria. Convicted for armed robbery, Peter Gibb, along with a bribed guard, Bert Brandt, devised a daring plan and escaped via a small private airplane that was to pick them up not far from the prison. According to official reports, the two men successfully parachuted over rural land north of Melbourne and vanished without a trace. The search, which continued for several weeks, yielded no results. No parachutes, no signs of landing, no other evidence. The plane they jumped from was thoroughly examined. No signs were found suggesting the jump did not happen. The case was eventually closed with the assumption that the fugitives either died upon landing or managed to disappear. The incredible happened 5 years later. In October 1958, Peter Gibb unexpectedly appeared at a police station in a small town hundreds of kilometers from the escape site. His appearance shocked the officers. He looked exactly as he did on the day of his disappearance. Same clothes, same hair length, even the same wrinkles. Moreover, he was clean, well-groomed, and showed no signs of having lived on the run. During interrogation, Gibb gave strange testimony. He claimed that during the jump, something went wrong. "I landed somewhere I wasn't supposed to," he said. "Ended up in a place without people, without time. I can't explain it better." When asked about Brandt's whereabouts, he only shook his head. "He didn't end up where I did." The fate of Bert Brandt remains a mystery. His body was never found, nor were his personal belongings, including the parachute. Even stranger, prison records noted that before the escape, Brandt had taken with him his father's wristwatch, a valuable family heirloom. That watch was later discovered in a completely unexpected location. In 1972, workers repairing a prison wall found it sealed inside the masonry. The watch showed the exact time of the presumed escape. Gibb was brought to trial and received an additional sentence, but the judge, contrary to standard practice, did not increase the severity of the punishment. Court records contain a strange note. The defendant displays signs of deep psychological trauma unrelated to incarceration. In prison, Gibb behaved unusually. According to guards, he frequently asked for newspapers to understand what year it is and showed an unhealthy interest in news about space exploration. In 1960, Gibb experienced a curious incident. During a walk in the prison yard, he suddenly screamed and fell to the ground, covering his face with his hands. When guards ran to him, he was mumbling, "They opened the door again." The doctor diagnosed a temporary psychosis, but interestingly, at that exact time, 300 kilometers from the prison, a group of school children witnessed a strange silver object in the sky. After his release in 1965, Gibb settled in a remote rural area. Neighbors said he built a strange structure of metal pipes in his yard, resembling an antenna, and would often sit next to it at night, writing something in a notebook. In 1971, he disappeared for good, leaving behind all his belongings, his house unlocked, and a note, "They found the right frequency." In the 1990s, the Australian military declassified several documents related to this case. One of them mentioned an anomalous magnetic event in the area of the presumed jump, recorded by a meteorological station precisely in 1953. Another document dated 1958 contains a record of an unidentified radio signal that was picked up for several days just before Gibb showed up at the police station. This case remains one of the most mysterious pages in Australian criminal history. For some, it's a story of a brilliant escape and a skillful hoax. For others, proof that doors between worlds exist and can open at the most unexpected moments. And for the prison guards of Victoria, it became a warning. Since then, no inmate has been allowed to wear a watch during yard walks. Dossier No. 9. Alexander S., the boy from Kazakhstan. In July 2009, An event occurred in the Kazakh steppe near Karaganda that baffled local authorities and the scientific community. 11-year-old Alexander disappeared during a family picnic in the area of the so-called Singing Barrows, ancient mounds known for strange acoustic phenomena. According to his parents, the boy walked away for just a few minutes to pick wildflowers and vanished without a trace. A large-scale search operation involving more than 200 people, helicopters and drones yielded no results. Rescuers noted a strange detail: tracking dogs lost the scent just 50 meters from the place of disappearance, as if the boy had simply evaporated. Even more mysterious was his return 5 days later. Alexander walked out of the steppe at the exact spot where he had vanished, wearing completely clean clothes with neatly trimmed hair and no signs whatsoever of having been in the wild. A medical examination at the Karaganda Regional Hospital gave astounding results. Tests showed no signs of dehydration, even though the average daily temperature during that period reached plus 35 degrees C. There were no scratches or insect bites on his skin, which would be impossible after 5 days in the steppe. Doctors were particularly intrigued by the condition of his nails. They looked freshly trimmed, though his parents claimed he hadn't taken any scissors with him. Alexander's story shocked even seasoned psychologists. He described tall, glowing people who took him upward to a room-like place without walls. According to him, there was neither sun nor moon, but the light came from everywhere. They showed me pictures, but I didn't understand what it was, the boy said. One detail especially intrigued researchers. Alexander mentioned that the glowing being spoke in sounds like the singing of the barrows. The case took an unexpected turn. Within a week of Alexander's return, the Karaganda region received a record number of UFO sightings. One particularly notable incident occurred at a military airfield, where a duty officer reported a disc-shaped object that hovered for 10 minutes above the runway. Radar stations recorded strange interference during those hours. Historians discovered curious parallels in local folklore. In Kazakh legends about the Singing Barrows, there are frequent mentions of children of light who take people to a world without time. Archaeologists note that the area contains ancient megalithic structures whose purpose remains unclear. In 2012, geophysicists discovered strange, regularly shaped cavities beneath the barrows, but further research was abruptly halted without explanation. After his return, Alexander began undergoing strange transformations. Teachers reported that the boy, previously of average academic performance, suddenly showed extraordinary abilities in math and physics. In 2014, he independently assembled a working radio transmitter from improvised parts, despite having shown no previous interest in technology. Particularly striking was his understanding of principles not taught in school. The family tried to avoid publicity, but in 2016 an incident drew the attention of special services. Alexander, then a university student, was detained near a military facility with a homemade device that, according to experts, emitted signals of unknown type. After this event, the family relocated to an undisclosed location. The final oddity in 2020. A group of tourists in the same steppe discovered a strange metallic object resembling an arrowhead, but made of an unknown alloy. Laboratory analyses showed the material contained elements not found in nature on Earth in their natural form. Next to the object, scratched into a stone, was a child's handprint and a date, 2009. This case remains one of the most classified in modern Kazakh history. Officially, it is labeled as temporary disorientation with elements of folkloric myth-making, but documents related to it are stored under the classification of special importance. For ufologists, the story of Alexander has become key evidence for the theory of contact children, individuals who from a young age are capable of interacting with other forms of intelligence. One way or another, the Singing Barrows of the Karaganda region have since become a pilgrimage site for researchers of anomalous phenomena, and the locals now watch children playing in the steppe more closely just in case the glowing people decide to visit this mysterious land once again. Dossier No. 10 Zoya, the Kharkiv parallel reality. An ordinary winter evening in 1993 in Kharkiv became the starting point of one of the most mysterious stories in the post-Soviet space. A woman known under the pseudonym Zoya was waiting for a minibus at the stop near the Southern Railway station. Numerous witnesses, including the driver of the approaching bus, saw her literally dissolve into thin air. The woman standing in line suddenly fell out of view as if she had been erased from reality. 3 months of searching yielded no results until in March 1993 Zoya reappeared at the same stop in the same winter clothing despite the arrival of spring. Her condition shocked medical professionals. Despite the absence of signs of starvation, blood tests showed normal levels of nutrients. She had lost 12 kilograms of weight. Her skin had a strange bluish tint, and her pupils did not respond to light in the usual way. They dilated with a 5-second delay. The most disturbing aspect was her story of a parallel Kharkiv. According to Zoya, she woke up in a city where the sky was poisonously green. All sounds were muffled, like underwater, and people were transparent, like cellophane. They looked right through me, she told psychologists. I could walk through walls, but I couldn't hold anything in my hands. What scared her most was that in this world there were no mirrors, only empty frames hung in their place. Medical examination revealed several anomalies. MRI scans showed microscopic changes in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for spatial orientation. Hair analysis showed no growth during the period of disappearance, as if the biological processes in her body had stopped. But the strangest thing in her pocket was found a tram ticket dated 12/03/1993, the day she returned, although it had been printed on 1980s paper with an outdated Kharkov Trans logo. After her return, Zoya exhibited symptoms of a special type of post-traumatic stress disorder. She had a panic fear of mirrors. In the first weeks, her heart rate would spike to 140 BPM at the sight of her own reflection. Neurologists recorded a unique reaction when shown photographs of Kharkiv. Her brain did not activate recognition areas, as if she were seeing the city for the first time. Interestingly, the archives of the Kharkiv Institute of Radiophysics contain mentions of a 1991 experiment on localization of space-time anomalies. The project's lead, Professor V.K. Ivanov, in private correspondence mentioned green zones, areas with altered electromagnetic characteristics. In 1995, near the southern station, a strange event was recorded. All electronic clocks within a 200-meter radius simultaneously lagged exactly 92 days, the duration of Zoya's disappearance. The woman's fate ended tragically. In 1997, she took her own life, leaving a note, "They've opened the door again." Notably, on the day of her death, a strange failure occurred in the Kharkiv psychiatric hospital where she was being treated. All surveillance cameras showed a green glow for 3 minutes, although a technical inspection found no malfunctions. This case is still being studied by specialists in anomalous phenomena. In 2018, a group of physicists from Kharkiv National University published a paper on local space-time fluctuations, where they theoretically justified the possibility of brief transitions between parallel realities. As a scientific curiosity, they used data from Zoya's case, under the pseudonym Case Z. Today at that ill-fated bus stop, a strange phenomenon is sometimes observed on certain days of the year, usually during geomagnetic storms. People report brief time lapses and green glimmers in the air. Locals whisper that Zoya is looking for the way home, but official science prefers to call it an optical effect from passing trams. The story remains unsolved but continues to influence urban folklore. In the Kharkiv metro, there is a superstition: if the train suddenly goes quiet and a green light flashes outside the window, close your eyes and count to 5. They say it helps avoid falling through into that strange world Zoya once entered. Mysterious cases of disappearances and returns of people, as described in these stories, represent a remarkable phenomenon that challenges our conventional understanding of space and time. These events, which occurred in different parts of the world and in various historical periods, display astonishing similarities despite their apparent disconnection. In all cases, people vanish suddenly, often in locations with specific characteristics, near ancient megaliths, within geomagnetic anomalies, or at transportation hubs. Their return was accompanied by strange physiological changes, absence of aging, unexplained indicators of health, and unnaturally well-preserved clothing and personal items. Particularly enigmatic are their accounts of parallel realities, cities without shadows, worlds with green skies, and realms where time flowed differently. Scientific explanations for these phenomena remain incomplete. Conventional psychological and medical theories fail to account for all aspects of these cases, especially the physical evidence, such as unusual artifacts or changes in the physical condition of those who returned. Meanwhile, bolder hypotheses involving temporal anomalies or the multidimensionality of the universe have yet to find convincing scientific confirmation. What unites these stories is one important message: our understanding of reality may be far narrower than reality itself. People who have experienced such events often speak of the fragility of the familiar world and the relativity of time. Their testimonies, no matter how unbelievable they may seem, compel us to consider the possibility that humanity might be on the brink of discovering new fundamental laws of existence. These cases remain open questions for science, but they also offer hope that the boundaries of the knowable world are much broader than we are accustomed to believing. Each such disappearance and return is not just a mystery, but a potential opportunity to rethink our core assumptions about the nature of reality.